Today I'm going to teach you all about a melanger or stone grinder. This is one unit right here. Yours may not be the same, or if you're thinking of buying one, there's plenty of decent brands out there. Although I have to say this one's very common. This is a Premier. So if you're a chocolatier or a pastry chef, or just somebody who wants to do some kind of grinding or melanging or smoothing in the kitchen, this is your machine. But I kind of want you to go in eyes wide open with what this investment looks like and what it's like to care for it and work with it and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing that there is to do is you got to clean it either from the time before or when you're done cleaning. Because I just pulled this thing out now, I see that there indeed is stuff to clean. I just want to show you the realities of that. In here, there's little pieces of peanut because this is a peanut butter one. It's peanut butter because we write peanut butter on the outside. And we try to keep this one for peanut butter, but it's got like little pieces of peanut butter in there and in the corners. And I just want to point out to you that, wow, there's so many crevices in this thing. See what I mean? If you look in here, see that? Obviously you want to get that out of there. Those are, allergens that are just living, and that's just peanut oil there. And the other thing that's super important on this particular model is this hole here. What happens here is that any excess oil will go down this hole and exit down the machine at the bottom. So that's kind of a nice overflow feature that they have. So anyway, the reality of cleaning this thing is that the rag is not going to do it. Doesn't mean that you can't spin it around a little bit, make yourself feel better. But you're going to have to hit this thing with probably steam or air. So I've got a steam gun here, and it's almost hot. Oh yeah, pretty good. You just want to kind of blow into those areas and do your best to get all of that out of there. I'm going to teach you not only how to clean this thing, but also how to assemble it. The reason that mine is labeled old one is because they have changed the system over time. This is a belt drive system underneath. So if you take all this apart and you get at where the motor is, you'll see a motor and a belt. And indeed, if this thing gets, bound up with product or whatever and it can't spin, the belt will eventually break and smoke, and then you'll have to replace a belt. But that's super cheap. As this little thing pops off, but you don't want to be spraying water in here. This is like getting close to the motor. You just want to get the edges. Yeah, see, it's a little bit gross. So I'll throw that in the soap water and clean that up. All right, so now that ring is clean. You can go back on top. Still a little bit of peanut butter in there. All right, good enough. And it's going down that drain hole too that I was telling you about earlier. That's a little hole there that's designed for excess oil. That's just going to go right down the unit. You see, that's why the table is wet. All right, I think we're done splashing and stuff. So now I need to show you the more of the finesse parts about how to put this together. I also want to show you some of the considerations that you have depending upon which machine that you get and some of the things that can go wrong. All right, so this is the basket. It's got the little plastic top, and this is what the center looks like. I'm going to take it apart so I can put it back together and show you how it works. First off, these are the stone wheels. All right, this is what's doing all of the grinding. These do wear out over time and you have to buy new ones, and usually you buy them in a little kit. But basically what's happening is they are rolling over the top of your product, and that's what's getting it to be finer and finer. These stone melangers can get right down there, 10 microns or less. Now that gets pretty imperceptible to the tongue. I mean, even 20 microns is usually enough to be so perfectly smooth that you don't detect any grit whatsoever, not even like the finest of salt. All right, so that's why people use these, is because they can take hazelnut and sugar and grind it and make a beautiful, smooth, perfect product. And it's these stones that are doing the work, and they are grinding up against the bottom of this thing, which is also a stone. So what you basically have stone on stone, but they're not scraping against each other. One is rolling over the top of the other. You have this little contraption or something like it, depending on how yours is made. And these two things on the end are what's doing the scraping. And then this is the axle upon which the stone wheel turns. Now, usually you are given some Teflon washers And the Teflon washer is obviously designed, to provide a smoothness, almost like a lubricated type thing without actually any lubricant. They'll have you put a Teflon on either side. The thing I want you to do if you own one of these things is be super, super vigilant on these parts. Every time I wash something, you always want to make sure that you count everything out at the end. You should see 4 Teflon washers, 4 stainless steel washers, and 2 stainless steel screws. You always want to see that. And if you don't, you need to immediately stop and find them and get them assembled in one spot, because there's nothing more annoying than if you start to lose one of those parts. So here's basically how it works. You take this thing here, you put on your first Teflon washer, then goes your stone wheel, another Teflon washer, stainless steel washer, and then your stainless steel screw. I keep saying this like a broken record. Yours is going to be maybe different than this, but it's fundamentally that idea. It shouldn't be very different from it. I'll do the same on this side. Okay, and then that's your assembly, and then that goes into your basket. I'll plug that in for you so you can see it. I can just press the button and it's going to turn, right? You see it's just turning. You put this on top. You can see that makes the entire basket, I don't know what else to call it, this basket turn. And then this goes on top. It's very important that you never run this empty, never ever, not even for a little bit of time, okay? It's not designed for that. So always make sure that there's product inside it before you run it. Otherwise you'll cause damage for sure. And then the last thing you need is the spring mechanism, which kind of puts pressure on the top of this thing and pushes it down, holds it down. And I want to talk to you about that, but let me go get it first because I see I've forgotten it here. So here it is. And this is also a mess. This has got peanut butter on it and under it. And this is just the realities of this. Cleaning this thing it's a chore. So anyway, I'm going to do it again now to get this thing clean. And of course, this is wet. And you never want anything to be wet around your nuts or whatever it is that you're grinding, or your chocolate. You got to make sure everything's dry, which does offer me an opportunity to tell you about another tool that's indispensable in a chocolatier's kitchen, and that is a high pressure air sprayer, I guess, for lack of a better word. This is mine. I'm not talking about compressed air. I have that too, but this is just an electrical thing that is corded, and you plug it in. It's got 2 speeds. Watch this. Something to invest in. So if I just gently turn this, it'll thread. Okay, it's threaded now. It started. And what I used to do wrong when I first started was I used to just crank it all the way down like this until it was maximum tightness, right? Thinking that that was the way to get the perfect grind. But I've learned over time that that's incorrect. And what you want to do is maybe go down all the way and then back it off like a couple of turns, 2 or 3 turns. You can talk to the manufacturer, might give you some advice on this. But if not, then just think about this for a second. The less pressure that's on it, the more likely it is for the stone wheels to kind of roll over whatever it is you're trying to grind. So it might be counterintuitive, but when the pressure is super high, it's harder for pieces to go between the stones. They might skid off to the left or right of the stone, and it actually doesn't grind as well. So especially in the early part of your grinding cycle, like especially if you're grinding cocoa nibs to make chocolate, for example, you want to start with a low pressure on this, like barely on even, and let things get going first before you start to, tighten it down until you get to a point where, you're happy. Plus you get a feel for it after a while in terms of what it needs to have for pressure in order to do what you want it to do. The other thing you need to watch out for when you run one of these things is heat. The fancier units will actually have temperature sensors and will detect when things are getting too hot and make adjustments. They might even stop. You need to do that if you've got a less expensive one like this. Every once in a while you're going to want to touch this with your hand, and if it's too hot, if it feels hot to you, like hot, definitely want to stop, because things aren't going well. You'll see that the nuts and so forth, there's like a glob that'll sit on the top, and then where actually the grinding is happening is down below the glob, What you want is the entire mass moving around, right? And as things get hot, that separation tends to occur and it's not going well. So that's another caution I have for you. Be wary of heat. Okay, I've made some hazelnut praline, and I'm going to show you the steps for how to get this into the melanger. This is what it looks like. And if you're not familiar with this, it's a common thing that chocolatiers do. It's basically hazelnut, could be any nut really. So it's hazelnut, some caramelized sugar, and you stir it up together, and then you let it sit on the silpat for a while. It basically becomes like a hard candy almost. See what I mean? And it cracks, crunches like that. There's no way you could put this directly into your melanger. What you always need to do is pre-process, and you would pre-process using a food processor like this, or maybe a Vitamix or something like that. You cannot sit here with a knife and hand chop this down enough, I don't think. You really need to get it along. Now, this has already been in here for a minute, but just check it out. It's been blending and blending and blending for, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes or so. And it's becoming a paste, but it has a long, long way to go. But it's a good start for the melanger. You can see it's already starting to move. Empty. Generally too difficult to put the paste in while this is in. If it was really liquidy and you could pour it, maybe. But if it's kind of like this, you're probably better off getting this into the basket first and then pressing the mechanism down in there. Melanger needs a certain amount of volume in order to work. That's an important thing I want to share with you. Obviously, if you put in too much, it's not going to work. But if you don't put in enough, it also doesn't seem to work. So you need to kind of get it right. So let me show you kind of how it acts. You set it down here like so. You put this in like that, and it just kind of rests in. My advice to you is that you run this for a bit without the screw cap on. Just let it mix around a little bit. But you see how the two wheels are turning? If they don't turn, it's a problem. You want to make sure that they turn. They are both turning just fine. But of course, I don't have any pressure on top. I'm just going to screw it on, but I'm not going to add a lot of pressure. So it started to thread, okay? You can kind of hear it change when you get down. You hear that? I hear the nuts cracking. I got nice movement. This is what I want. Do you see how there's this sum in the middle there that isn't moving? Every once in a while, you're going to have to go in and move that around because as you can see, oh, you see that wheel just stop? What do you do now? It started again on its own. Generally means back off a little bit on the pressure and let those nuts pass underneath the wheel completely. At this early point in the game, you could almost run it without this. You didn't see it with this praline, but sometimes whatever you have in your melanger becomes very liquid and it wants to kind of rise up the sides. And when that happens, you'll get leaking along the top, or it can actually fling. Oh, that's awful in terms of cleanup. The solution to that problem is plastic wrap. Let me show you. Just like this along the top, and that's the answer. I suppose in a dire situation, and we've done this before, sometimes we actually use tape when things are bad, and we literally tape it onto the top. So those are the big ideas with respect to using a melanger. Let's kind of review quickly, right? So the first is make sure you pre-process your product. Don't be throwing full chunks of anything in here. In the beginning, remember to let off on the tension screw or even run without anything at all, just to kind of get things moving, and then slowly over time, increase the tension as you go. Another thing to always pay attention to is heat. If it feels hot to you, simple thing to do is just stop. Don't start throwing in oil to try to get things to move or whatever. Sometimes you have to, but usually if you just let things rest and settle down, it'll work out just fine. And then, keeping it clean, right? And that's hard to do, but it's the right thing to do. Make sure you don't cross contaminate when you're using this thing. So that's my best advice for using a melanger or spice grinder like this. So if you have any questions, by all means, leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. And best of luck using this awesome piece of equipment to create some fantastic things that you have in your head. All right.